Back in the 50s and 60s, pheasant hunting reigned supreme in many parts of the Midwest, but especially Iowa. Opening day had a special status as several generations would gather at the family farm or other coveted properties to match wits with the king of the upland birds. These experiences remain with us for a lifetime and become memories from the field. Welcome to another episode of Memories from the Field. Tonight we have a special guest that makes a living creating memories in the field for the many hunters that visit High Point Lodge in Pierre, South Dakota. Brad Donald and his family own and operate this fantastic hunting destination. And Brad, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for having me.
We'll spend some time talking about your operation out there in a little bit, but I kind of wanted to dig into a little history. I understand that you grew up in the state of Iowa. Is that right?
I did. Corydon, Iowa, Wayne County.
Right.
So right on the southern edge, about south central, but we weren't far from Missouri there.
What was it like growing up there?
You know, it was great. I will say it was hilly, a lot of trees, a lot of ravines, a little bit more pasture than farm ground. So that just made it perfect for upland hunting. We had partridge, we had quail, we had pheasant. In '88, I think our county was voted the #1 pheasant spot in 1988. So that's about right when I was graduating, right before I was graduating. So it made it great for a young man with a dog to go out and hunt birds every day.
Now, most of us got introduced to hunting through a family member or a friend, and if you're like me, it was at a relatively young age. How did that work for you, Brad?
You know, my dad did hunt some, but he worked a lot. So he wasn't able to always go hunting, but he tried to make time because he could just tell that I was passionate about it. But his cousin, Dave Donald, hunted all the time. People probably wondered if he did have a job. He hunted all the time, and he worked with dogs. So he had labs, and he also, I think, had some Brittany's, but mostly labs is what I remember. And that kind of got me into hunting more and more. But he really liked waterfowl.
Right.
And when I got to hunt with him, I knew that it was going to be a great hunt just because that's what he did. And he did guide waterfowl. And that's kind of what got me into dogs and hunting.
How old do you think you were when you started going with him, kind of on a routine basis?
You know, I must have been probably 10, 11, right in there. My dad started driving semi-truck, and I remember he told Dave, "You need to take that boy hunting because I'm not going to be able to." So they kind of made a deal, and I know Dave asked me, and Dave's legs didn't work the best, so he used me a lot to push the boat, do some chores, do things like that, which I just love to do because I knew I was going to be able to go hunt.
And in exchange for that free labor, you got to learn from the master?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
What now on the upland side? Now you'd mentioned that you came across or did some hunting with some pointing dogs over during that period of time. Did you have a pointer in there somewhere?
You know, so we had dogs, but they weren't hunting dogs, and we only could have one dog. And I remember I had a boxer, and you know, he wasn't going to hunt anything. He didn't even retrieve. But I thought he was cool looking, so that's why I ended up getting him. But me and my buddies always hunted, but I mean, the birds were so good that we didn't have to have a dog, you know. I mean, we just walk these little ravines and shoot birds. But we had a farm and I was out there all the time and I was by myself a lot. And one day a dog showed up and I didn't know what it was, but he was white and liver, I would call him, and had a big old flaggy tail, which I already know that you know what I'm talking about. And
I
he
do.
was an Irish. Yep, he was an Irish setter, but I didn't know what he was at the time. But I thought he was just a good-looking dog. So I don't know. I went hunting, and I just walked out back door, crossed the fence, took off hunting, and this dog went with me. And boy, he was ranging, and I thought he was going to blow the birds up. And next thing you know, he just stopped dead, and I'm like, well, he must have a skunk, or he must be pointing a varmint of some sort. And no, he wasn't. It was a covey of quail.
Wow.
And I shot the quail, and he went over and got one, and then we found the rest, and we just kept going, and he just kept pointing, and I'm like, holy buckets, this is going to work. Well, he had a bandana on. So I knew he was somebody else's, but I wasn't very old now. I'm going to say I was too young to know better. And I took that bandana off because I knew my dad was going to ask me, where'd this dog come from?
Right.
And after like the fourth, my dad was gone, and like after the fourth, fifth day of hunting, I didn't want anybody to take him back.
you
So
you were hooked on that setter.
I was hooked on that setter,
Yeah.
and we hunted every day, if not twice a day. And I remember my dad asking me, well, if he's that good, he's got to belong to somebody. So I think I did put a collar on him, and he was mine. Well, one day, my dad was having coffee with somebody, and they overheard me hunting quail every day with this dog, and how I just loved to go every day with this dog. And the guy goes, that kind of sounds like my Irish setter that I lost. And my dad goes, well, maybe it is. And he goes, do you mind if I look at him? And sure as heck, he came out, and he was the new banker in town from Kansas.
Oh boy.
Sure as heck, the dog I named Hank was his.
Oh.
And I don't think it mattered if I cried or not. Hank was going home with this guy.
Yeah. Well.
But you know what gets me, Wade, is why I never had an Irish setter. You know why I didn't ever have a pointer? I don't know why. I suppose I was getting busier and busier with sports, and I could only have one dog.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that threw me off why I never did end up with the pointing breed. Because that really triggered me to be a wing shooter, was that dog.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something. I mean, especially if you were young, I imagine that was pretty crushing.
Yeah.
And I get it. The guy lost his dog, and hallelujah, I found my dog, and oh, by the way, thanks for keeping him in shape and hunting him for for several weeks or months or whatever it was. But wow, that's got to be tough. That's got to be tough. I thought you were going to say, and he said, you know what, he's better off with you. But I thought that was going to be the end of the story. But
when I say he was good, I'm sure this guy had a lot of time or money in this dog, because he was a dandy.
Yeah. What year do you think that was? If you had to guess.
It would have been 80. Let's see. I graduated in 90. So probably 80, 83, 84.
Okay.
Right in there.
Okay.
But we would, we'd shoot our partridge and then go shoot our quail and then go shoot our pheasant.
Oh boy.
And then I moved to South Dakota. I went to college in South Dakota.
Well, let's talk a
And
little bit about that. Was the hunting? Did that have anything to do with that, or is that strictly an athletic kind of a thing? Or
that
both?
was straight athletic.
Okay.
I'd never been to South Dakota. And when I came up here, hunting season was over. I transferred from Iowa Central College to Dakota State College in Madison, South Dakota. And I remember I transferred like in December. So hunt was over, all that. We played spring ball, and then I came back home, and then I went back up there. And during the season, I noticed some of these football players would be going hunting during the day. And I said, hey, can I go along? And they said, yeah. And we would go, and nobody had dogs, of course. I mean, we were all there from different states playing football, but we would go with some of the in-state guys to their farms, and nobody had a dog.
Huh.
And you would push these trees, and there would be 15 to 2,000 birds fly out these trees at the end, and you would just whack these pheasants, and then everybody ran out and grabbed them and ran over here and grabbed them. And Wade, I was a lineman, so I wasn't like that. I wasn't up there for cross country. I wasn't just running
So you better kill
through the
yours.
snow or hurdling fences.
Yours better drop dead in the ground. Huh?
So I just say, why don't anybody have any dogs?
Yeah.
And everybody would say dogs will just mess it up. You know, they'll bust the birds out, and none of these guys would let you bring a dog on their place. So another year went by, and my dad's cousin, my cousin, Dave Donald, made me promise that I wouldn't get a dog until I was done, because to have him in a city and da-da-da-da-da.
Right.
Well, sure as heck, I broke that rule too. And I got a dog. I got a lab. And I trained it. And I wanted a e-collar, electric collar, for Christmas. So my dad's like, well, that's a lot of money. And I'm like, I know, but that's what I want, but I understand if we can't get it. Well, my cousin must have gave him a deal. So I got this electric collar, and it was old with the prongs. Do you remember, Wade? You had to
I do.
put the different, it had red and brown, and I think it had 3 different chips you could put in it, for low, medium, or high. And it looked like a phone. I mean, like a...
Yeah.
I mean, it was huge,
They were huge.
Yeah, it looked like a nightstick a cop would have.
Yes, they did. Yeah.
So anyway, my buddies would go with me then, and they're like, wow, that's a great dog. And his name was Tank. Well, I went home with a kid one weekend, Jason Kalusik, and his folks did a little commercial hunting, but mostly friends and family. But you know how that is. Everybody wants to come back with their friends and family. So they did charge a little bit. And I went to their place, and I remember Grandpa saying, I said there's no dogs on this property to my buddy, Jason. And Jason's like, Grandpa, you don't understand. This dog has a collar that will shock him if he messes up. And they're like, what? And they're like, yeah, he won't get too far, and he won't do this. And he's just unbelievable, Grandpa. You got to watch him. So anyway, he looked at that. He looked at my buddy like, you better be right. Well, I remember we're walking through this cow lot. My dog's barking at these cows, and then a donkey comes up and he about kicked my dog. And I'm like, holy buckets, are we going to get in the field? We're going through all these lots with all these animals. And we get to the field, and I mean, there was birds. And everybody got their limit, and the dog found a lot of birds, and he just helped a lot. And that grandpa's like, I want one of them dogs.
Really?
So that would have been close to like my senior year. I was going to graduate in college, and I'll be darned if I didn't start teaching and coaching. Well, then in the summers, instead of painting and doing odd jobs that teachers do, I started training dogs. Well, I sold dogs to them, and then the next thing you know, their neighbors wanted one, and then this guy wanted one. Well, I was actually making more money with the dogs than I was the teaching and the coaching. So I remember I called my mom and I said, I think I'm just going to train dogs for a living. And she's like, well, you can't do that.
Are you crazy?
And I remember my dad said, you can do anything you want. You know, do something that you love to do.
Yeah.
Because all we've done is work all our life. And not that they hated their job, but the 80s were tough, you know, and he was just like, do something that you love to do. So I remember I stopped teaching and coaching, and I just went full time into training dogs. And I was busy, and one day this guy goes, can you drop those 3 dogs off at my lodge? And I said, I guess I got a couple other dogs going out that way. I could do that. So I dropped the dogs off, and he said, I've got 3 guides that are sick. Could you help me for the weekend? And I said, yeah, I could help you. So I remember he said, after the first day, he said, you know, I'm not going to pay you because I want to see how good your dogs are the next couple days. And I said, sir, I said, what did I say? I said, it's not going to be about if my dogs are good enough, you know, so I want paid. And the next thing you know, I started working out there full time.
Wow.
And just training dogs in the summer. And then that guy left, and I took over that place and ran it for 20 years. And that's kind of how the ball got rolling.
Wow. Well, and that's what a great place if you're training dogs, and what another great place to work them is on, you know, to get them on birds and lots of birds and have that available. That's almost like a paradise there, it sounds like, for a guy training dogs like you did.
You know, it was. And then at that time, there wasn't many trainers. That would have been 1997, and there was a handful of us. A couple were field trial trainers, and so right when when I was teaching, I started guiding a little bit too. I was training dogs, and I advertised great land for training dogs, place to stay, this and that. So a couple trainers came, and they stayed there for the summer. Well, they knew way more than I knew.
Yeah.
And with the ground and the birds and everything, it was a magnet to get these trainers to come down here. And I just learned from a lot of these guys.
So they'd come in there for the summer and use that as a training ground, and you got to be mentored by some of the guys that have been doing it a lot longer than you had. So it kind of worked out perfectly.
Yes, Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And they were older guys that just had, had done it all. And it was just everything kind of stacked up the right way.
Now, where you're at now, there at High Point, is that the original place that you went to when you started guiding and training dogs in, where you are now, or is that?
No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir. So I was at that other place for 20 years, and we just kind of outgrew it.
Yeah.
And so we moved to Pierre and started this lodge.
And obviously, when you, and I haven't been there. I hope to someday. But from looking at your website, it looks like just the amenities just look tremendous. I mean, for an operation like that. But I'm guessing does some of that take away from your dog time because you're trying to run that big business now as well and keep customers happy, or do you find time to plug in with the dogs when you need to?
I'm fortunate. My son came back to help me full time. He also played a little football in college and was lucky enough to have some great seasons for South Dakota State. And when he graduated, he said, "Dad, I'll come back and help you." And I was like, "I'd love to have you." So he came back. So that really, really helped free up some time. He'd been helping me, since he was in diapers.
Yeah. So he knew that he already knows all the phases of the operation from growing up there, and it's kind of like growing up on a farm, right? You learn all the ins and outs,
right,
and how to run all the machinery and how to to deal with all that. And so it sounds like he did that as well.
And I was a little when he said, "I'd like to come back and help you," it shocked me, as in the fact I thought that I'd worked him hard enough and he had scooped enough poop out of pins that maybe he'd never want to do that again. And but so he's back helping me full time, and he's really doing a good job and likes the dogs, and he's good with people.
Yeah.
And good with the dogs. So it's really the both of us are doing it, which allows me to do a little bit more on the business end of the lodge. And my wife runs the inside, and we run the outside. So it's really coming along.
And if you want to get away for a week, you've got him there to hold down the fort, and while you slip away if you need to. And
amen.
That's
yes.
always good. But yeah, it looks like I said, just reading about it and looking at everything, it looks like just one fantastic spot. I don't know. It just I don't know how you would ask for anything more. And it sounds like you got plenty of birds, and that's that's one of those things that here in Iowa, of course, that we struggle with some. I think this year is supposed to be a lot better. They're saying it's the best numbers that they've seen in the last 15 years, I think. So maybe we'll do pretty well this year, we hope. But the numbers aren't anything like you guys see out there. But maybe back in the day down there on the southern edge of Iowa, it was the bird numbers were tremendous, and I even remember those days when I first moved to Iowa, 40 years ago. But we're trying. We're doing everything we can to try to, and I don't know they'll ever be like they once were back in the day, as you know, Brad. But where there's cover, there's usually going to be some birds, and that's the biggest challenge is keeping cover in Iowa. So.
Yes, and I remember you talking also too that you've been guiding for some time now, and how you enjoy just watching other people shoot that bird, or when other people comment on your dogs, and watching your dog work. It allows you to watch your dog work more. That's the true wing shooter, the guys that we talked about a little bit earlier. It's just You got to have that in you. And
Well, and I've been guiding for about 15 years. And, I think I mentioned to you when I first started, I thought, I don't know if I'll like this or not, not carrying a gun and, not shooting. But what I found quickly was that I was able to really give my attention to the dogs and what they were doing and what they were communicating back to me as the handler. And there were things that I had probably overlooked when I was carrying a gun and I was worried about whether I'm going to be able to, shoot or not shoot. Now I'm focused just on what's going on and what's about to happen, and being able to communicate that back to the clients. And so I quickly found out that, man, I like this better. I'm able to see things that the dogs are doing. And so, yeah, I really enjoy it. And the people, just working with the people, and most of them are very, very, very good. And as you know, they come in they come in with all levels of skill and experience, and so sometimes you kind of have to, unless they're a repeat customer that comes back multiple years, and you go, okay, Joe's been here for the last 10 years, he's good to go. But every once in a while, you get a newbie that you kind of got to, okay, let's see how this is going to go. But for the most part, they're pretty responsive to us, as you know. You try to do it in a way with it's mentoring rather than anything else. But it sounds like that's kind of what you enjoy, that you get to see the training and the effort you put into your dog work basically pay off out there in the field with a client that is actually able to harvest a bird over that work and that time that you've put into that animal. And and to me, that's and then when people kind of start saying to me, well, the dog I'm getting, and it happens all the time, as you know too, where they start making comments that the dog work is starting to be more important to them than the shooting, because they'd never hunted with a dog before, and that kind of thing. So,
yes. And we are running labs, retrievers here. We've got the birds. It's just sometimes it's hard to get them all picked up, just because we're walking food plots, a lot of sorghum, a lot of grass, tall grass fields, and a lot of corn fields and stuff. So they just work good to get the birds picked up.
Yeah.
And the elements are cold here. So for what I do now, that Labrador Retriever works the best for me.
All right.
But like I just said, yesterday I got to walk the plains, and we covered 10, 12 miles with short hairs and English pointers running. And I was just in awe to watch that and have the over and under where you only got 2 shots, and you walk up and this dog's pointing, and you want to harvest those birds for that dog just because he's held point for me to get over there, which took me 20 Mississippis because he was 500 ahead of me.
Yeah, right.
So, it's a complete different hunting, and I just enjoy all of it. Yeah. I really do. Yeah. It's them jumping out of a boat, swimming through the reeds, retrieving ducks and geese. It's just those dogs make it for me.
What you talked about groups and using your labs to kind of make sure all the birds are retrieved and accounted for. Do you have what's your typical group that you would have pushing a food plot on a given day? 10, 5, 10 more. Are the groups?
We'll take groups from any size, but we'll take them. We'll get groups from 2 to 20. Usually is about the max we'll put in a group. But if a guy's got a group of 20, we'll hunt that group of 20, and everybody's like, "Isn't that hard?" Well, when you do it every day through the season, it's not really hard. Sometimes it can be easier because everybody's in a straight line, and it's kind of a march through that field, and not much gets around you. And
I
It works.
could see with 20 shooters though, you could have a lot of birds on the ground at any given time. So I imagine you need those dogs to really be working, and especially if
Yeah,
you're wing shooting a few, which you normally will do, and they're trying to chase birds and try to. So yeah, I imagine those dogs come in pretty handy, for that kind of work.
yeah, we just couldn't do it without. I mean, there's a lot of times we'll have 20 birds down at one time. A big flush of
Yeah.
300 birds get up, and you got it surrounded. You guys, they're just a drop of them, and we just got to get them picked up.
Yeah, yeah. So you have typically a couple guides out there with a group that size, I would imagine then, or?
Yeah, a group, we usually have 4 guides for 15 people,
Okay.
and for 20, we'll even bring in probably 3 more. So,
Okay.
and everybody rides 2 dogs at once, and then we'll rotate dogs at noontime, if there's just a lot of retrieving and weather, just how cold it is or how hot it is.
When does the pheasant season start rolling? I know usually in mid-October there's a youth weekend that usually opens up the season. Is that like I've been to South Dakota, but it's been 10 years ago or more, so I haven't been out there for a while. But I thought they had a youth weekend that kind of was before the main opening. Is that still the way it is out there?
Yes, sir. It's usually the 3rd weekend, I do believe, in October. We do both. So the regular season is from, let's say, the 20th of October to Christmas. And then Christmas is pretty cold. Your guys are out, fly in from Georgia to hunt 17 below.
Oof.
So we do have both. We have private ground that we can only start hunting in that October time frame, and then we have preserve ground that we can start September 1st, which allows us to be able to make a living off of the season,
right?
Because of being able to hunt from September through March. So we'll take January and February off just because of how cold it is, and then we'll hunt that end of February and all of March, and then we're able to hunt most of September and all of October. So it gives us a good 3 months more.
So right now you're hitting it pretty hard then, and then
yep.
September, October.
Yes, sir.
Now, when you're in that off period, and during the summer, are you still doing dog training, or you've kind of moved out of that? You just don't have the time to do it.
No, we get rid of all our training dogs the middle of September. September 15th is when they go home, and then we start to take them again on April 1st. So we're done March 31st. I would usually wait until May, but now Bo, he's young and he wants to get as many as he can in. So we started picking them the first again.
Now, you've had some really special dogs over the years. What is there a dog in particular that it comes to mind that you just he kind of still is that special one in your heart that we all have?
Being that I train and we have 17 dogs, it's tough.
Yeah. 17.
So I've had that many dogs for a long time,
Yeah.
But there is, it started off with Hootie, like Hootie and the Blowfish. My wife named her Hootie. It was a black female. She was my first master hunter.
Okay.
And then I bred her a few times, and I kept a few puppies to train. But she didn't outproduce herself. I ended up training those dogs and selling them. Then my next great dog was a dog named Harry, and I didn't name him until he was 2 years old, all the way. I guess I shouldn't say that. He wasn't quite two. Let's go with a year and a half.
Okay.
But my dad's real name was Harry William Donald.
Okay.
And I lost him pretty early.
Yeah.
He was 54, I think, when he passed. So this dog was the best. And I knew I wanted to name a dog after my dad, but I'm like, boy, he's got to be the best because I'm going to have 30 more dogs,
Yeah.
personable dogs. I said, I'm only going to name one Harry, so it's got to be the best. Well, I'll be danged if he was just rocking and rolling. And I named him Harry at about a year and a half old.
Yeah.
Called him H forever, and then when he got his master hunter, I named him Harry, and then we bred him a bunch of, studied him out a bunch, and now I own his son named Hick, Hick.
Now, what was he
And
like?
I would say
What was he
Hick.
like in the field typically? What was his best trait?
He was a pointing lab,
Oh yeah.
and
Okay.
he wasn't really bred to point or nothing, but a lot of them do. If you get him over enough birds in the right cover, he'll point. Not like no setter. It's not that kind of a point. People say, well, if you want a pointer, you buy a pointing lab, and if you want a retriever, you buy a retriever. Well, I got them both in one.
Yeah.
They don't point like a pointer does. I'm not going to say they'll hold it near as long. I'm not going to say they work that scent cone like a pointer, but they do point, and it makes it nice for my other gentlemen. If we're crossing a fence, that dog will point, and I'll be like, here, sir, let me hold your gun and help you get across this fence. And he's got some time to get over there and get ready to shoot that bird, and young kids too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I do like the pointing labs also, and that's kind of what started me. Was Harry was a pointing lab, and
Now, is there certain lines that are more liable to throw pointing dogs like that, or is it just kind of a hit and miss? I mean,
no,
no.
they've really, did the genetics, and now when I first started training, it'd be hard to tell, but I had to have been close to having one of the first Grandmaster pointers in the state of South Dakota. And I had a couple of those dogs, Talon and Gator. And when they were Grandmaster Pointer Master Hunters, everybody wanted to breed to them, see? So that really put me on the map. That's what made I was able to just train dogs for a living because of that, the stud service of them breeding other dogs. I've never had a bunch of puppies. We train more dogs than we sell puppies, but I'll have a litter a year.
Yeah.
But now they were the only two Grandmaster pointers in the state in 90. Well, let's just go with 2000 to 2004 maybe, and now there would be hundreds.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying it's flooded. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I don't just go off of that. I used to run a lot of hunt tests and travel the country, and once I had kids, I wanted to be there with them and not travel so much. So we kind of gave up the hunt test stuff and just started doing gun dog training.
So when you have like 17 dogs or more like you do, then if you got a big group going out and you're going to push the food plots, you're probably wanting a dog that's do you kind of pick and choose? Okay, we're not sending a dog like Harry because he may point some birds, and we just want to keep this group moving kind of a thing, or does that even enter into it?
I'm glad that you said that, because really it doesn't, because when I said they're still not a pointer, they're just not. If you're in cover or if you're in food plots like road crops, they're not going to point for sake. If that bird's running, they're going to chase him up and flush him. I do pair dogs up though, like a dog that covers a little bit more ground with a dog that does as much ground, that might be a little bit more nosy, or just works a little closer.
Or if you had just a couple, two older guys that just wanted to go and do a little, hunting out there in a spot, you might take a dog that's more likely going to, point a bird for those two guys than a big group, kind of a thing. So you're kind
Bingo,
you're kind of looking at your roster and deciding who's going to be the best fit for these two guys or this big group of 20 or whatever. So
yes, sir.
Yeah.
No, and I do, and I just like that part. Kind of like the coaching and stuff. I like to do that. And with the training of dogs, we train a lot of started dogs. We'll keep dogs back from litters, and then we'll train them, and then we'll hunt them the whole season, and then we turn around and sell them that next summer.
Yeah.
So we can sell a dog and say, this dog's had 400 birds. I'll give you a 90-day guarantee. If he's not as good a dog as you want, you bring him back. And that just, to give somebody a 90-day guarantee on an animal. Yeah. And I've never had one come back. And it's just, I want people happy, because I get a lot of guys that might be 65, 70, 75, and they'll be like, this might be my last dog.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I want their last dog to be the best.
You bet. You bet.
Well,
and it's kind of like we don't have a litter very often. We have one once in a great while, but and you're always looking at that litter going, okay, which one of these is that Harry that you were talking about? We want to keep Harry, but which one is it? And sometimes that's a little difficult. It really is. So to decide.
I tell you, one of my best friends, Ryan Talbot, his son just got a dog from me, and it's one of my son's best friends. And I said, Bo, he's going to pick the worst dog in that litter. And Bo goes, there's not going to be a bad one in the litter. And I said, I'm not saying there's a bad one, but if we end up getting 6 back to train for people, I guarantee Wyatt's will be the worst out of the 6, because we want him to have the best. You know how that works.
Yeah,
you just can't pick. And we did. We had 5 back to train. And I will say, Wyatt's was the best. And that's about the first time that's happened. Yeah. Usually the harder I try, the worse it is.
Yeah.
I mean, they're always good dogs, but I always want that friend or that special person to have the best. And it doesn't always and
probably it's kind of one of those things like for me, probably most people who see that if you put all 5 of those dogs in the field together, most people probably would not really see a big difference. Like you do, you and your son, or I would. You'd say, well, okay, this one's a little stronger than that one. They probably wouldn't even notice. And I know that with our setters, there's things that happen in the field that they don't see. I see. I don't know if you do this, but after I'm guiding, I kind of do a self-report to myself about, okay, Duchess did, A work. The big guy was maybe a B, and he didn't have the best day in the world. And as you know, some days they're off a little bit, but we always kind of do that. Okay, who really excelled and who didn't? But if you ask that guy that was in the field with me for 2 hours, he would say, "Oh, those dogs were fantastic." And I'm the guy that's kind of being critical and going,
exactly,
that wasn't the greatest retrieve that that dog made to me, but nobody else They don't see those little things, but that's what I like about the guiding thing that you mentioned. Is just being able to see those characteristics in those dogs and trying to do the best you can to make them better. Especially if there's another litter that comes. How are you going to make? It's like athletes. How do you make the next generation better than the other and the parents were? When it comes to athletics and that kind of thing, and that's what they are. They're athletes.
That's right.
They're born and bred to do that, and so. But I'm very envious that you get to make a career out of doing what you're with your dogs and being able to run that operation out there. That just would be. I just can't imagine anything. I know it has its probably downsides at times, but it sounds like it's be a great place to live and spend time.
It's been great, and I got to thank the good Lord for helping me make it happen, and just the right roads that I took, and there's a lot of, when people say I'd rather be lucky than good anytime, I do think that I've gotten a little lucky on some of the routes that I've taken, and
what's your favorite?
The family's been there.
What's your favorite bird to hunt out there? Do you have a favorite?
I'd be wrong to say it wasn't pheasant, because it was pheasant, and now that I do it for a living, that can take that away a little bit. But I'd have to say it is the pheasant, because that's kind of what the road that I took was. I could have guided probably anything, and I just really enjoyed the pheasant hunting. But they were the most plentiful too out here. But now I like to hunt it all. I can't say one or the other. I enjoy dove hunting, because you set on a bucket and they come to you. And I do enjoy the grouse hunting over pointers. And I can't wait to see your Irish setters point some of these prairie chickens and grouse. That'll be a bucket list that you'll be able to cross off when you come out here.
You'd have to set a while for me to get there, I don't know if a dog can hold them that long. You said what?
No,
you said 20 Mississippis. I think it's going to be more than that for me. I think to get there, but
well, you'll like it too, because we got buggies, we call them, the Rangers.
Oh, there you go.
And you cut the dogs loose, and they'll quarter out there, and you can kind of tootle along until they go on point.
There you go.
And then you can get off. We used to do it off of horseback, but with the machines, they've just made things easier and easier, and not all the guys want to climb up on a horse, so.
Well, plus if you probably have to then have a stable of horses, right, for your clients, and then you got all that,
exactly.
All that upkeep and care, and so yeah, I can see that, but that might be a little more, especially in that big open country out there. It's beautiful. We started hunting sections, and when and that's like until you're standing in it, you don't realize how big a section of land is, of CRP. And it's just like, oh my gosh, how do we approach this, And as you're walking, and you got 8 or 9 guys, but you're just scratching the surface with 8 or 9 guys. I mean, it's crazy. And then you're just seeing bird after bird erupt up ahead, and they're coming out of the cover, and 50, 60 at a time and more. And it's just, wow, And for me, I was caught myself just enjoying that, going, I've never seen this. Just watching this number of birds come out of here is entertaining for me. I don't know if I'll ever get close enough to shoot one, but we finally did. But yeah, it was just because we're used to hunting kind of the tight little places. 80 acres, a 100-acre field is a big field for us. Around a grain field and that kind of thing. So you get out into your country, and it's like, oh my God, this is just crazy. So, but everybody should do it. I always tell everyone that you need to do it at least once before you put up your guns for the last time. And but yeah, hopefully be able to get out there one of these days and and check it out. But what do you ever do any other hunting outside of? Do you go into Kansas or do any other stuff outside of your area, or have you don't have time probably to do that?
No, I do. So I think I'm pretty sure it was December. We went to Kansas quail hunting, and it was unbelievable this year around Dodge City. A gentleman with Prairie Outfitters named Ryan Thompson took me there, and he grew up there hunting quail, and he lives here now. But he's still friends, a landowner there with, I don't know how many acres he said it was, but it was in the thousands.
Oh, wow.
We went quail hunting there, and then I have a gentleman down in Texas, Dan McBride. I go quail hunting with him every year south of Austin. And then I usually treat myself and some guides, and we go to Mexico.
No kidding.
Dove and duck hunting every January.
That's got to be an experience.
Yes.
What do you like about that quail hunting? I mean, obviously, you as a kid, you probably walked into many a covey. But is it that for me, when I grew up down in the Kansas City, Missouri area, that was kind of home for us, and we really didn't have pheasants. I never saw a pheasant until I moved to Iowa 40 years ago. But we had lots of quail, and fence lines and timbered edges and that kind of thing. And boy, we grew up doing that with pointing dogs, and there's just nothing better I can think of. But it's a little disappointing because up here in the eastern part of the state where I'm at, there's just not many, not many quail left, unfortunately. But boy, those things will humble you if you haven't hunted them for a while.
Oh, I know it.
Yeah. They're fast little boogers.
I'm going to say that's why I just love quail hunting so much, is because it's so different than the pheasant hunting, from the food plots to the draws. But the biggest difference is the dog, going with that pointing breed, watching that dog point, then watching another dog honor that point.
Yeah.
And then bringing that lab up, telling him to sit or having him flush to help retrieve some of them birds. I guess I just love the pointing aspect of it.
Yeah, and in fact, you got a dog standing on point, and when you walk in there, or somebody walks in to flush, so you never know, is it 5 birds or is it 50 birds?
Exactly.
It's kind of one of those. And about the time you think it's a small covey, or you think it's part of a covey that you pushed earlier in the day, it's not. It's another separate covey, and it's just we used to do a video series called Setter Tales, and we traveled around doing that, and we got down in Kansas, and we were trying to film a quail hunt, and I not only trying to shoot them, but trying to keep a camera on them was pretty challenging at times. And so it's kind of like, wow, I forgot how fast. And obviously they were this fast when I was a young man. So what happened? But it still is fun. It's still fun.
They are, and they're just that covey bird, that fast. It's just different. I like doing the different hunts, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, I really have appreciated the time that you gave to us tonight. Talk about a little bit of your background and history, and what you're doing out there now, which just sounds like a great spot. And hopefully you'll be full this season. I'm sure you will be. And do you get a lot of people that come back year after year after year, or how does that?
We do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about, I'm going to say it's 90% repeat business. But things like this, podcasts like yours, look at the followers you got. And again, I really appreciate this, you and your boy having me talk, and how we kind of met through Bo's fiance's mom, maybe, and
Yeah.
just how
Yeah.
things happen, and how just how things happen. And I just really appreciate it.
Well, I just like, I can talk dogs all day long to anybody, and it sounds like you can too. From what, it's just fun to, I had a few labs growing up. Where I've actually, when I got into pointing setters, I had a lab, and she wasn't anything special, but she gave a good effort, and she could find down birds, and that was what I needed at the time, and but I was hooked on hunting with a dog, and whatever that dog was going to be. But when I got that first setter, you're right. It was just like, wait a minute, this is just a little different. This dog's locked up, and just seeing that and watching what the dog could do, and then when you put another dog in the field as a brace, and they're working together and they're honoring each other, and then you go, wow, this is it for me. I just, the hunt's the hunt, but and what you hope is you go with somebody, whether it's a friend or a new client, but you hope that they get to see something that maybe they've never experienced before. They've never seen the skills of these dogs and what they can do. And if they get to see an honor, or they get to see a nice retrieve, or get to see dogs do what what we take for granted some days because we see it all the time, every day. But, when they get the chance to live that and experience that, I think that's what makes them come back. And I'm like you. I have a lot of people that, have hunted over one of my setters, and they always want to hunt over that old setter again. Can we hunt over,
Right.
Lou again? Yeah, we can hunt over Lou again, that kind of thing. So, but anyway, it's been great spending some time with you.
This episode brought to you by way of our sponsors, Highland Hideaway Hunting Preserve in Riverside, Iowa. With over 1,500 acres of meticulously managed and maintained preserve. Book your hunt today at highlandhunting.com. And Interstate Grain Service. Family owned since 1981, we offer personalized service with product and feed knowledge. Competitive pricing on numerous brands, including Purina, Nutrina, Kinetic, and Diamond. Stop in today at our retail location off I-380 in Center Point, Iowa. And Kinetic Performance Dog Food. Kinetic's line of premium dry food and supplements provides clean, sustainable energy for everyday active, sporting, and working dogs. Visit kineticdogfood.com for details.